All right. Well, hello and welcome to the Actual Tech Media EcoCast. Today's topic is going to be a very interesting one because we are looking at protecting endpoints, and we're approaching that from an understanding both human and technical solutions. I love that. My name is Jess Steinbach. If I haven't met you, I'm with Actual Tech Media. I'm so happy to be here with you all today to take part in this conversation. And endpoint protection, I really find this fascinating because there are so many different elements to consider. Maybe you're here today because you're thinking about updating your defenses. Maybe you're thinking about looking at new technologies to protect against potentially emerging threats. Maybe you're thinking you want to update foundational and legacy security programs, potentially better alerting systems, or coming from that human approach, you might be thinking about whole new training programs for your team. So whatever your current needs are, endpoint protection is an important consideration. And the great news is that today we have some expert guidance to help us through this conversation. We're going to be chatting with top experts from KnowBe4, from Rubrik, and from CyberArk. These innovative teams are going to help us through, get to know some of these hot trends, the ideas, the solutions, strategies, everything that you need to be thinking about in endpoint protection, again, from that tech side and also from the human perspective. So as I'm sure you can all tell, this is going to be a great day, and I think we should get things rolling quickly here. All right, so we do have a few prizes. I know that icon really catches your eye there. I'm going to come back to that in just a second, but let's keep rolling here. Where I actually want to pull your attention to get started here today is that questions box in your webinar control panel. So if you haven't already said hi, reach out, give a wave to the other members of the Actual Tech Media community. It is so fun to see you all connecting here every morning. I love seeing the familiar names. I love seeing new friends joining in, and we've got some great conversations happening already, so keep that coming. Now, throughout the webinar today, that questions tab is also the best place to reach out to the Actual Tech Media crew. So if you are having any tech issues and you need a hand, just let us know there. Now, I do want to give you a quick reminder that a browser refresh is going to clear out any of the usual tech gremlins. But if they're being a little persistent and naughty today, no problem. Just shoot us a message and we will jump in and support. Now, we also want this to be an informative webinar for you today, which means that we want to see those technical questions. So throughout today's EcoCast, we hope that you will get engaged, get involved in the discussion, send in comments. Questions are great, and we definitely want to get to those. But if you have your own story, a comment, a resource, a link, something you want to share with the community, your own tip or a discussion point, just send it all in. We love seeing that from you. Now, not only are we going to have team members responding to you during the live webinar over live chat, we also make sure that all the questions asked get to the awesome folks at KnowBe4, Rubrik, and CyberArk after we wrap. So that means even if we don't get to your question during the live session today, you will get an answer back. So make sure that you're getting those questions in. This is a great opportunity to connect directly with an expert. Okay, I'm going to bring up two more things on the webinar console for you in front of you right now. So the very first thing is the Twitter button. Now, you are going to hear all kinds of cool things today. You're going to get little brain lady-uppy moments, and the Twitter button is a great way to share that with your friends, your family members, your Twitter friends, whatever they may be. And so use that Twitter button. The hashtag for today's event is going to be automatically added to your post. Now, the last thing that I want to point out before we move away from your console here is to take a look at that handout section. You're going to find some really fantastic resources and takeaways from our speakers here today, some awesome reading, and it's really just a wonderful way to follow up on everything we're going to learn. So we're going to learn a lot of cool stuff today. You're going to remember most of it, but you're going to want to have some of these resources to look at later to kind of help jog your memory. So be sure to open those links, download those resources, and save them for later. Now, as I mentioned at the top here, my name is Jess Steinbach. I'm a moderator at Actual Tech Media and very, very excited to be with you today. These are honestly my favorite parts of the week is when I get to hang out with all of you on EcoCast and MegaCast. And we will have the wonderful Scott Becker and David Davis here with us on live chat throughout the day as well. And if that wasn't enough good news, we also have some cool prizes coming your way. We've got 3 $500 Amazon gift cards that we will be giving away to 3 lucky winners. Now, I want to remind you all that you do need to be here live in attendance during the webinar in order to qualify for those prizes. All winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. Hey, if you don't have those memorized yet, no problem. Neither do I. You can head on into that Handouts tab, click in, scroll down to the bottom, and you'll find the full T's and C's waiting for you there. All right, now I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but we absolutely love getting all of your technical questions. It is the best part of the webinars, being part of these live events, is being able to ask those questions. So we have an extra special incentive for you besides just the good vibes of submitting a cool question. In today's EcoCast, we will be giving away a $50 Amazon gift card to the best question asked in each of our live sessions. So today we've got 3 sessions. That's 3 chances to win a $50 Amazon gift card. We review all the questions asked after we wrap. So that means even if your question does not get read out during a live Q&A session, there is still a chance to win that. So get those questions in because you have that chance to win. And also, again, just brings up the whole energy, the vibe of the entire presentation. So it's really, really great. Okay, so now, this is a couple of little reminders for you up on the screen, so do take a look at that, including the fact that all prize winners are required to submit an IRS Form W-9 to Actual Tech Media. And if you are a lucky winner here today and you're looking for maybe a potential way to give back, you do always have the option to donate the value of your prize to one of our selected charities. You can see them up on the screen. Thanks to generous prize winners on previous Actual Tech Media webinars, thousands of dollars have been donated to these wonderful organizations. So if you are a lucky winner, you want to get involved, please let us know, and we will be very happy to help make that happen. Now, as I've said a few times now, we're pretty excited to be here live with you today. We want to keep that good feeling going. We want to connect with you, so be sure to find Actual Tech Media on Twitter and Facebook. We always want to hear from you. Definitely track us down on YouTube if you haven't already. There are so many incredible webinars waiting for you, all different lengths and sizes and styles and topics. So whatever you are looking for, there is something there for you. So be sure to subscribe to that channel. Check us out on LinkedIn. Lots of great content there. And one last awesome content source. If you haven't already spent some time looking at the Gorilla Guide Book Club, I'm going to highly recommend that, especially if one of your New Year's resolutions was to maybe do a little bit more reading or update that reading list, maybe get that self-education going. So this is a great opportunity for that lifelong learner out there. So there are free enterprise IT books authored by top industry experts. You get to stay up to date on all the trending enterprise technology. And even better, these books are going to work on your Kindle, your mobile device. They're completely free, so they're just easy, easy, easy. You can download these awesome resources at gorilla.guide. There's a link back in that Handouts tab that we were chatting about a little bit earlier. All right, so one last fun way to win a prize and grow our amazing community here is to refer a friend to the Actual Tech Media webinar series. So if you're having fun at these events, your friends probably would too. So why don't you invite them to come hang out with us? You're going to find a link to do that right in the Handouts tab. You're also going to get automatically redirected at the end of the webinar. Now, here's the thing. I know right now that everybody's inboxes are really full, and so I do want to promise you before we move on from this that we are not going to spam your friends. You're not signing them up and subscribing them for years and years of harassing emails. We're going to send them one email invite with a calendar of upcoming webinars, and then we will send them one reminder in case they miss that, and that's it. And then we let that go, and we stop bothering them, and they are welcome to come back anytime they want, but they'll stop getting emails from us. So please do keep that in mind and make sure that you refer friends and coworkers. You could each win a $300 Amazon gift card. We hold those drawings every month. So think of somebody awesome and invite them to come join you. All right. Well, that was it for the housekeeping stuff. We got through that pretty quickly. And I think it's time that we start getting into our sessions. I don't know about you guys. I am ready to learn some cool stuff, and we are definitely going to learn some great things with our next speaker here. Now, you guys will probably recognize Evgeny Karam. He's the co-founder and Security Architecture podcast, also just an all-around wonderful, fascinating speaker and expert, and always a great keynote. So I am going to step back from the mic and hand the platform on over to you, Evgeny. Here, take it away.
Hello everyone, thank you for the introduction. Let's talk today about endpoint security. I think endpoint security is very, very fundamental these days, and we'll talk today a bit more about this. So let's start. You're probably familiar with the idea of defense in depth. We've been talking about this for a very, very long time, It's a very, very common expression when we're building houses as well. We also don't use just one wall. The wall is usually created by putting several different components there to make sure we have cold and hot and we protect them from everything. It is the same idea with protection of IT and corporate assets. In the past, the majority of the asset used to work with the idea of network security. We will have many different defenses to make sure when we browse the internet, we are protected. The assumption was, and wasn't just an assumption, we were in the office. Only certain people used to take laptops home. Majority of us work from the home or from the office. With time, this changed, and especially with the pandemic, everybody work from home right now. And it's mean everything you see right now not always apply to us. And the idea really changed. The endpoint security really changed as well. Now, another important factor here is that with the time, and you can see here in the graphs that I took recently, the traffic to the internet also changed. If you see here, majority of the traffic, almost 98%, this is from Chrome, is encrypted. It means when you go to the internet and you browse to the internet, not everything is visible to the employer if they do network security. Yes, there is a lot of function here to decrypt traffic, but not always possible. Also, guess what? The bad guys also learn how to do this as well. So they can encrypt the bad traffic as well, that not always will be visible. And in some cases, we can do something called pin certificate, client certificate, that will be impossible to decrypt the traffic as well. What does it mean? It means the defense in depth on the network part not always working as we expected, and we're shifting more to endpoint security. There's a lot of network defenses that we can talk about them in a different day, but the endpoint security is very, very fundamental. Now, we think about this right now, majority of us can work from anywhere. It could be from home, it could be in Starbucks, it could be in vacation. Many people travel and work right now. So it used to be a rarity. Right now, pretty much everybody understands it could be anywhere you can do. And it's mean we can get you emails, you can compile code, you can do your voice calls, you can do everything pretty much from anywhere you want. And it's mean that we want to centralize and understand what we can do on this endpoint to make sure we can protect it. Because the bad guys also understand this. And they understand that when they send you the email or they point to your website, they want you to download a file, to execute a malware, to go and run some kind of a script to make sure they can get access to your device, and when you connect back to your work, they may do something else, connect to the office, do something malicious, understand what you have, harvest for your information. This is why endpoint security is very, very important. What you see here on the slide is basically some kind of a graphic representation. We used to call it AV, antivirus. Right now, we call it EPP and EDR. EPP is endpoint protection. EDR is endpoint detection and response. EPP and EDR are really the same right now. It's running on one agent. The biggest difference, without going very deep, there's a lot of people after me that will talk and explain more about this, is how heavy is the client, how nimble is the client. We moved long time away from just very heavy database of scripts and signatures to behavior analytics and to different way to detect bad guys and malware. But endpoint security is not just malware. There's other things that are important. And here's a list of some of the protections that we need to do to make sure we have a fundamental and very important view of what's happening with the endpoint. Of course, malware is one of the first one. We don't want the bad guys to get access to your laptop. We don't want you to click on a file and be infected. We don't want you to open an email to be infected. But we also want to monitor your device. We want to understand what's happening, if the productivity is working well. There's anything bad happening with your device? Can we go back and understand later on what happened in case of something bad happened with your device? We also definitely want to back up your device as well. Maybe not the entire files, but maybe the important files, the documents, the important documents that you have and you need to consume day by day. We also want to train you. We're not just creating protections and security controls, we also want to make sure when you see a file, when you see an email, when you go to a website, you'll have an eye to recognize there's something bad happening with this file, or maybe this email is malicious, or maybe you're getting email from your CIO asking you to buy a lot of gift cards in 6 a.m. in the morning, and it's come as external. Why would it happen? It doesn't come as external, it should come as internal. And maybe it's a funky email, or when you click and hover on the email, you see it's not a true email. There's many different techniques about user training that are important as well. Also, right now, there's a lot of applications that we can run from the web, but there are still a lot of applications that we can run on-prem when we install on all devices. Should we install any application, or maybe the IT department, the security department, will able to whitelist and blast certain applications as well. By creating this approach, we're going to remove the majority of the malware from coming to our devices as well. Definitely DLP, data loss prevention, is important. Should you send all the documents you have, or maybe there are some documents that are only internal to your company and you want to leave it for the company to be internal, or you don't want by mistake to share all the customer information with somebody else. We also don't want you to send company information to your private email maliciously or not maliciously, or mistakenly. We definitely want the laptop to be also encrypted. In case you lose the laptop, we don't want the bad guys to get your laptop and have access to all the files. There's also ways to manage the device. It could be potentially disable or enable ports. This could be potentially CD-ROM not really apply anymore, but disable Bluetooth, or let you connect to certain Wi-Fi's or unencrypted Wi-Fi's, for example, or not protected Wi-Fi's, or potentially finding the device later on when or if you lose the device. Also, with device management, I can help to understand if this device is part of the company and use it as authentication when you connect to certain sites or back to home. And the last two are URL filtering that is happening in the network, but we also see many ways to do it on-prem as well. Last one is forensic. In case something happened with your device, if there's a way to go and understand what happened to get the information. As you may see, it's quite complex. There's a lot of different options here, and I will give it back to you, to the guys, to explain more what's possible and what's not. Thank you very much and have a nice day.
Well, thanks, Evgeny. I'm not going to explain the complexity of endpoints, but luckily for everyone out there, but I am going to bring in the experts who will. I appreciate that. Thanks for that keynote and for getting us started here. Now, for those of you who are EcoCast regulars, you can see that this poll that I've got up on the screen for you is a little bit different from our usual starting poll. And this is actually a really cool opportunity. What we're looking for here is we want to get a little bit of direction from all of you out there. So we're kind of trying to get an idea of what types of solutions you would like to hear from, so that we can make sure that we're getting you the best information, the info that you need, the solutions that you need in a timely manner when you actually need them. So what we're looking for here is your thoughts on which vendors, which solutions you'd be most interested in hearing when we think about cybersecurity webinars that are coming up. Now, one thing I do want to remind you, if you aren't already familiar with this, you can scroll on that poll slide there. So please do take a minute and make sure you've got all the vendors visible. And you can also move that window, stretch that window out a little bit. I don't know if you knew that already. Hot tip for your audience console. If you want that slide window to be a little bit bigger, you can stretch that out and make that a little bit larger. And then you can see the slides a little bit bigger, and you can also see all of the solutions on the poll. So I'm just going to review them here very quickly. Please do take a minute and fill this out. So the options are, and by the way, this is multi-select, so select all the options that you like. So there is nothing wrong with selecting every single option if you're very excited about all of these solutions. What we're looking at here is checkpoint. So this is threat prevention for all of your assets and workloads across public, private, hybrid, and multi-cloud. So whatever you've got, they can deal with threat prevention. That's a pretty good opportunity there. WatchGuard, security solutions for cloud infrastructure for multi-factor authentication. So MFA, if you don't already have it, if it's on your radar, this is a great opportunity to start thinking about that. pfSense, so open source driven firewall router and VPN solution for network edge and cloud secure networking. I was watching some of their informative videos the other night, and they somehow managed to make talking about routers fun. So that's, I'm going to tell you, that is not always easy to do. They do a great job of it. I would definitely recommend checking that out. SonicWall Cloud App Security offers next-gen security for your users and data within cloud applications, including, now this is great, including email, messaging, file sharing, and file storage. So all of those hard-to-protect areas that, of course, we're interacting with the most. This is really important. So if you're interested in that, SonicWall might be the solution for you. Barracuda, complete web application and API protection platform to secure your workloads in the cloud. Okay, so anyone out there working with cloud should be thinking about that type of protection. We've had tons of webinars on that, and we'll continue to. If this is something that you're interested in, select that solution there. Radware, so application protection for any cloud, protecting applications across hybrid environments and enabling agility. I love that word. I love the word agility. I know that there's some words we say so much that we almost start to hate them, but if that one I think is a really important one, both in terms of our team structure and our IT infrastructure. So please do, if that's something that you're thinking about, select that Radware option. Mandiant, so cloud cybersecurity services with technical configuration assessments and scenario-based exercises. This is so great. Scenario-based exercises, so you can actually get something that's very specific to what you need and what, you know, that specific scenario training. And then lastly here, certainly not least, we've got Broadcom, so complete security stack from endpoints to identity, payments, network, and beyond. Complete. You got to love that. You have your full stack. And as we just went through with Evgeny, this is obviously a complicated thing to be thinking about. So when you can get that whole kind of one-stop shop for at least some of that, I think it's a really cool opportunity. So if any of these solutions sounded interesting to you, and again, I'm going to remind you, this is multi-select. So please select any and all. And if you haven't already done so, be sure you're scrolling down, getting the full list of vendors and solutions there. And please make sure that you are selecting any that are interesting to you. What this is going to do is help us know who we should be inviting here to come chat with all of you so that we make sure, again, that we're getting you the solutions that you need. So take a minute and click on that poll if you haven't already. I'm leaving it up for another second here, and I'm going to move on. Thank you. I see some really great responses, lots of interest, and that's really exciting. Okay, now we're going to move along to one more quick poll. This one's short and sweet. This one's very easy. All we want to know is, what is your time frame for adding new or updating existing IT solutions in your company? Obviously, today we're talking about endpoint protection. We're talking about the human and technology side. So when would you be thinking about implementing some of the things that you're hearing about today? And your ranges there are 0 to 6 months, 6 to 12, 12 to 24, or you have no sweet clue and you're just here to learn and absorb and you have no idea when you'd be implementing. It could be tomorrow and it could be 2 years, and that's fine. That's fine. Wherever you're at in this journey is completely fine. I'm seeing actually quite a few of you in the not sure range, which I think makes sense for what we're talking about today, because it is a complex and layered issue. And if you're not sure if you're looking at a problem that is human or you're looking at a problem that is technological, there might be some discussions that you need to have in your organization. And hopefully today we'll give you some of those tools to get started with that. All right, well, I think that's enough of our starting points here, and now we should probably jump into our sessions. Now, I know there's a lot of you out there who got pretty excited when you saw that title on the screen, because the Know Before presentations are always fascinating. And I'm pretty excited to kick off today with Perry Carpenter, Chief Evangelist and Strategy Office at Know Before. Perry, thank you so much for being here to get us started, get the EcoCast rolling. Now, I know that you have a ton of information to cover, and my understanding is you're going to go in kind of a mindset perspective, which I'm really curious to dig into. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand the mic right on over to you. Take it away, Perry.
Well, hi there and welcome. I'm glad that you were able to join me today for this. So the first thing that I want to get into is really the fact that to be human is to be prone to deception. And so that's why you have this picture of Sun Tzu here, because he had this great quote that said, all warfare is based on deception. And really we see that all throughout history, that the human experience is wrapped up in deception. And in fact, I say that to be human is to deceive and to be deceived. And so why is that? Are we actually wired for deception? Is that part of the human experience? The second is, how can our minds be hacked and hijacked? And then the last one, within the short time that we have here, is how can we ethically leverage these skills? From our earliest memories and our earliest experiences as humans, we are being shaped to deceive. And it comes naturally, and it's also taught to us. If you can remember, or if you've had kids, you probably have had this experience where you or your child were told to go brush teeth to get ready for bed, and you or your child runs out of the bathroom. It says that you've done it, even though you haven't. And then, of course, what does the parent in that situation do? They walk in and they want to verify because they care about the health of their child. And so they go, oh, I see that you actually didn't because your toothbrush is dry. And then ding, all of a sudden in the back of our minds goes, oh, okay, there's this correlation between my actions and the evidence thereof. And then your parents actually shape you and they teach you to deceive because there are social situations that you enter into, and you find out that there are things that you should say, and there are things that you should not say, even when those things are true. And so there are times, let's say you were drugged to a family reunion. You didn't want to go. You don't like crazy Uncle Bob for some reason. And your parents say, I don't care that you'd rather be playing video games right now. You're going to come to this family reunion. You're going to act like you like it. You're going to shake crazy Uncle Bob's hand and you're going to smile and say, I'm so happy that I get to see you. And so we're taught to put on that mask and to pretend to be and to pretend to believe things and hold values that we don't actually hold. The sad reality behind all of that is that our mind is wired to believe the deception as well, because we're all about taking shortcuts. So let me show you a little bit of an experiment of what this feels like. So what I want you to do here is just focus your mind on one of these cards. Just pick a card. I'm going to make all these go away in a second. So you have about 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Lock your mind on one card now because they are all going away. And so now take a look at these cards and give an honest answer. Is your card gone? And if so, how did that happen? Let's go over this real quick. So the first thing that I did is I started with these cards that you see here. You'll recognize all of these. Of course, I said in a very short amount of time, I'm going to make all these cards go away, but I want you to lock your mind on one of those. So I put a little bit of pressure on you. And then here's the card set that we ended with. Now I want you to look at these. These are all face cards. They're all colorful again. But what you'll see is that the suits don't match up. And so regardless of the cards that you picked at the very beginning, what you'll see is that because I rushed you through the process, you probably didn't even notice that all of the suits changed. So regardless of which card you chose at the very beginning, all of those cards were gone. So because it's a completely different set of cards. And that is really related to this fact that our minds are all about filtering and presenting this thing that we call reality to us. And so when we think about reality, it is this thing that is shaped by all of the different contexts around us. Reality is it's based on our past. It's based on the present, things that we're taking in all of the time. It's based on the pressure that we're under, and so on. There's some great work that's been done in this area on the concept of change blindness by a guy named Daniel Simon. He wrote a book called The Invisible Gorilla. You may have seen the YouTube videos where he's running that experiment, and if you haven't, here's the link. I'd really encourage you to go take a look at that video and run through the process, because you will be amazed at the things that can happen right in front of you that when you're forced into a certain condition, you just do not even notice. So let's get into the second part, because we are on a limited time. How can our minds be hacked and hijacked? As we get into this, I want to expose you to the research of a guy named Daniel Kahneman. Daniel Kahneman is a Nobel Prize winner. And he won this for his work that really birthed the field of what we call behavioral economics. And Daniel Kahneman says we have two ways that we think: a system one type of thinking and a system two type of thinking. The system one is very fast, it's very emotion driven, and it's based on this thing that we call heuristics or shortcuts. And so what happens is our mind says, oh, I know what this means, and it just jumps to the conclusion. And so it will take the fastest way to solve the problem because that minimizes effort. System two is much slower. It's more methodical. It takes a lot of effort. It's like solving a complex math problem. We don't like it. Now, the thing is that system one saves us a lot of time. It makes us feel good. It pushes us into the next moment. And in a lot of ways, it's really, really good for us, because otherwise we'd be caught in analysis paralysis all the time. But the downside is that it's error prone. System two is much more reliable, but the downside is that it takes longer and it's harder. The other thing that we can be thinking about here is that there's this concept of cognitive bias. And cognitive bias sneaks in all of the time and exploits system one. Cognitive bias and system one have kind of shacked up. They just live together. And what happens is that we have all of these preconceived notions and ways that our minds have already been wired to believe or to do certain things based on the way that we were raised, the department that we're in, the lingo that we know, the ideas that we've previously been exposed to, maybe even what we've had for lunch, the emails that we've read that day. All of that comes in and it shapes the way that we think, and it shapes all of our biases. These can be really easily exploited by anybody that wants to, from a salesman to a family member to somebody on Facebook to a political persona, all the way up to the cyber criminal, because all of it is about exploiting system one. You've probably experienced this. When you have two people with diametrically opposed cognitive biases, you feel the tension. If you've ever been on Facebook and you've been trying to convince somebody of a certain fact or reason why you believe a certain thing, and they come at it in a completely different way, what you've got is you have diametrically opposed cognitive biases at work. You have different worldviews working. And what we see over and over and over again is that it is really, really hard to buck against somebody's pre-established cognitive bias. And so what do we do whenever cognitive bias is at work? And that's where we get into this idea of working with the frame that somebody is already in. So if I'm a social engineer, then I want to exploit the frame that someone is already in by playing to a cognitive bias or to a preconceived notion or to a vulnerability that I perceive within their mind, based on what they already believe, the patterns of things that they already do, the friend network that they're in, and so on. This is why phishing campaigns work whenever they're exploiting known biases or, in some cases, prejudice or emotional flashpoints or tragedies, because they get our emotions riled up so much that we bypass logic and we just react. So all of this comes into the concept of framing. Now, framing is one of these things that, when we think about it, we realize that we're all prone to. So I've used the term worldview. Worldview is interchangeable with frames. Now, there's a great quote by the president of Framework, Susan Boyles, and what she says is, if the facts don't fit the frame, it's the facts that people reject, not the frame. This is that Facebook conversation. This is that Thanksgiving table conversation if you live in the U.S. This is if you're in somewhere else around the world, this is where you are at that family gathering, and you just cannot get through to your parent or your sibling or your uncle or somebody else who has this completely different view on something. And even though you presented all the facts and all the evidence and all the counter arguments to their claim, that they might even go, yeah, all that sounds right, but I just don't believe it, or I'm not going to do that. Well, that's because there's framing involved. And so it's much better not to attack the frame, but to come at the person, number one, with empathy, and then number two, to build a new frame and then try to bridge those frames together by finding commonalities. So here's what the concept of System 1 and System 2 can look like when we chart it out. This is a concept called the OODA loop. And an OODA loop really originated from military training, fighter pilot training. A guy named John Booth is the person that first coined it. And it's all around the cycle of observation, orientation, decision, and action. So we observe something based on all of those contextual cues and frames and prior experiences and everything else that we have. We orient around that, or we interpret that observation. And then based on that orientation, we decide and we act. So, I mean, you can already imagine ways to exploit this, because if I'm an attacker, if I'm a cyber criminal, or if I'm somebody trying to exploit emotion in some way, my goal is to hijack that entire OODA loop and jump you from observation to action without any critical thinking, without you moving into System 2 and trying to work something out. So to do that, I can manipulate facts, I can withhold facts, I can manipulate the context, I might move your attention somewhere else, I can exploit biases, I can incite emotion, I can wrap lies within truths to create a truth sandwich is what I call it, or I can leverage a whole bunch of principles that you can find in the works of Robert Cialdini and others around persuasion. Now, all of this is always moving somebody through the OODA loop in the way that you want to control it, rather than in the way that they would naturally do it. And that's the attacker's model for this, is I'm going to exploit the way that you observe something, or I'm going to exploit the way that I believe you will orient around these facts. And I'm going to exploit System 1 because of that. Or I'm going to even maybe withhold enough facts that if you try to run through that in System 2, you'll come to a wrong conclusion. So where does that leave us from an ethics perspective? How do we use this? I use the word exploit a lot right there. What does that look like if we were to move this into a world where we can take advantage of the fact that we know that System 1 and System 2 is a thing. We know that cognitive biases are a thing, and the framing and worldviews and all of that comes into this. Well, how do we account for that in our security programs? I wrote a book last year called Transformational Security Awareness: What Neuroscientists, Storytellers, and Marketers Can Teach Us About Driving Secure Behaviors. And the mantra that I use all through that book is that there are three realities of security awareness. The first one is that just because I'm aware doesn't mean that I care. The second is, if we try to work against human nature, we will fail every time. And then the last one is, what our employees do is way more important than what they know. And I'll make this extremely clear for you. What an employee has known has never stopped a breach. It's what they do that stops the breach or allows the breach. Somebody can know all the right things and still allow a breach to happen. And somebody cannot know what they're doing and still stop a breach. And so the knowledge is secondary. For me, the action is always primary. And so what I want to try to do is get it to where system one takes over and pushes somebody into the right action, regardless of the knowledge or the information that they have. And that's where somebody like BJ Fogg can come in and help. And I really love BJ Fogg's approach to behavior because it has worked so well for anybody that has really employed his design mechanism. What Dr. Fogg says is that we are lazy, we're social, and we're creatures of habit. So lazy is that system one piece. We don't like to spend effort that we don't have to spend. We're social, we're influenced by those around us. We like to influence those around us and show ourselves to be good. We are moved by the pack. And then we're creatures of habit. We like to do things, and we tend to do things the way that we've always done them. And so we need to build for that. We need to account for that in our programs. And so here's the Fogg model for behavior design. The takeaway from this is that behavior happens when three things come together at the same time. Motivation, which can range from low to high, ability, which can range from something that's really hard to do to something that's easy to do, and then a prompt to do the behavior. I can have all the motivation in the world, but if something is too hard for me and I don't have the right tools or the right knowledge or skills to do it, then all my motivation in the world doesn't help. And so there are people in our organization, they're highly motivated to do the right thing, but they don't have the right tools, skills, or knowledge to do it. So we have to figure out how do we prompt, or how do we bring them over the line so that when we prompt them, they have the right combination of knowledge and ability to get the thing done that we're hoping that they'll do. We also have people that have the right ability and they can do it all day long, but they just don't have the right motivation. And we need to find a way to push that motivation over the line, or to find times during the day or during the week or during the year when that motivation is naturally over the line. And then at that point, go ahead and prompt them. That's when you do it. So these things are always moving together. And so when you start to think about that, what you'll realize is that that's like an onion. You can start to peel it, and you can build entire programs around models that account for all of those things. Because what is giving information? It's prompting in a way. Asking somebody to read information is prompting. They have to have the right ability. They have to have the right motivation. You have to be asking them to do it. Asking somebody to create a great password is a combination of motivation, ability, and prompts. Asking somebody not to let people tailgate is a combination of motivation, ability, and prompts. Asking people to destroy data in a secure way is a combination of motivation, ability, and prompts. So my question for all of us then is, how do you and how will you use your superpowers? I mean, once you understand how to design behavior, that's a powerful, powerful thing. And we can do this responsibly, we can do this ethically, and we can be extremely successful at reducing risk when we do so. So with that, thank you so much. I really enjoyed speaking at this virtual event in this strange season, and I hope that you'll contact me if you have any questions.
Oh, man. Well, as I said, know before, always a great way to start. Thank you so much, Perry, for that presentation. And I'm curious if anyone out there has any thoughts on those superpowers and how you might be using them and what you think they might be. I think for me, I try to use my superpowers, what little they might be, to try to make your days a little bit more interesting, maybe a little bit more engaging, make sure that you get the information that you need. So if anyone out there has thoughts on that, please let me know. Yeah, just an incredible presentation. I'm seeing some high fives coming in from the audience as well. Jeff says my eyes are open. I agree, Jeffrey. Jim says he got some really good information out of that. Yeah, I was absolutely fascinated and locked in all the way through. I was thinking, actually, it reminded me of when I was a kid and I wasn't allowed to watch TV when I was home before my parents. And my dad would come home after work and he'd say, "Did you watch TV?" And I'd say, "No." And he'd say, "Well, I know that you did." And I couldn't figure out how that he knew that I was. And then I watched him one day. I left the living room and I watched, and we had one of those old TVs, the big boxes. And I realized he was going back and touching the back of the TV to see if it was hot. And so obviously he could tell if it was hot. I had just been watching TV. So we had a good chat about honesty, one of those good formative moments when you're young. All right, well, if you haven't already seen, I've got the poll up on the screen for you all, and what we're curious about is what is the additional information that you would like to get? What is the follow-up you would like to get from KnowBe4? Obviously, there's lots of great info here, and just kind of scratching the surface with Perry on what KnowBe4 can offer. So if you are interested in getting a bit more information, just click on that poll and let them know, and they will follow up with you and get you whatever you need without you having to do a bunch of Googling and searching. So this just makes your life a little bit easier. I'm also going to recommend, if you haven't already done so, head on over to that Handouts tab. We talked about that at the top of the webinar here. And if you click and scroll down, find that KnowBe4 link. You can actually sign up for the KnowBe4 phishing security test. This is a great way to find out how prepared your organization is when it comes to social engineering. So click on that link and find out what percentage of your employees are phish prone. Great information to have, so be sure to check that out. I do want to remind you all that I know we didn't really have time to stop with Perry today and do a little bit of a Q&A, but all the questions that you asked over live chat are going to the KnowBe4 team. So they'll be answering over live chat. They'll be following up with you via email afterwards, so you will get answers back. And again, you're still entered to win that best question prize after we wrap here. Now, speaking of prizes, I'm going to leave that poll up for another moment here. And I am checking to see. We do have, yes, we have a prize winner in the wings. All right, so we're going to give away one of those $500 Amazon gift cards now. Now, I do need to remind you that you need to be here present live at the EcoCast in order to win. And our very first winner of a $500 Amazon gift card today is Kevin Albert of Georgia. Kevin Albert of Georgia, you have won a $500 Amazon gift card. Congratulations. We will reach out to you after we wrap up the EcoCast today. Now, don't forget, there are still 2 more chances to win those $500 Amazon gift cards, plus the best question card that I mentioned. And with that, we're going to keep zipping along and get into our next exciting presentation. Now, here's a name you will all recognize, one of our longtime favorites here on the EcoCast. I'm very excited to introduce you all, or as I said, probably reintroduce you all, because I'm sure you'll recognize him from some previous webinars. This is Robert West, Inside Sales Engineer at Rubrik. Robert, thank you so much for being here with us again today. It is always fun to chat with you. You always have great information. I know that today you've got a ton to cover and dig into, so I'm going to hand the platform right on over to you. Take it away, Robert.
Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Robert West, and I'm a sales engineer for Rubrik based out of Austin, Texas. Today, we'll be going over the Rubrik Zero Trust Data Management Platform and how it enables customers to back up, secure, and access their data quickly, no matter whether that data resides on-prem, in the cloud, or SaaS-based such as M365. And we do so through a single console for management and monitoring. Due to the short amount of time we have today, there are features and capabilities that I won't have the time to showcase. However, for a deep dive demo of our capabilities around ransomware detection and remediation, sensitive data discovery, as well as orchestrating the automated disaster recovery, please feel free to reach out to your Rubrik AE. For today's presentation, I'm going to run through a few slides to give you an overview on Rubrik and then jump into a quick demo to give you a tour of the Rubrik user interface. So here at Rubrik, we started our journey by listening to our customers with why they needed help and where they needed it the most. And from those conversations with our customers, we heard that the backup systems being used over the years don't align with what the business needs are of tomorrow. IT is being asked to do more with less, but the backup tools in place require a ton of manual effort and babysitting. As the data grows, the environment becomes more complex to keep up with the requirements. And these legacy tools have outdated architectures. Not only do they result in slower and inconsistent recoveries over time, they significantly slow down the organization's ability to adjust, pivot, and stay competitive. All of this forces organizations to buy multiple backup products from multiple vendors for different workloads and use cases and spend a ton of money in the process. That doesn't include the cost to train people or hire someone to run those legacy systems. And these are typically large CapEx purchases that require frequent hardware refreshes and carry unpredictable costs into future years. This was and still is our why. Why did Rubrik enter the market, and why are we working so hard to disrupt the status quo? This led us to focusing on three main areas to align with organizations as they go through their digital transformation, and similarly, where we believe we can help you and your team. The first is building a modern architecture with consistent innovation that leads to saving time, improving operational efficiency, and reducing costs associated with data protection. The second is providing a purpose-built platform for hybrid and multi-cloud environments to increase cloud mobility and improve business agility while taking advantage of the cloud's economies of scale. Lastly, but most importantly, is doing those two things with the utmost level of security. This includes meeting compliance across any industry regulation and ensuring your sensitive data is fully secure in the case of an unplanned event or disaster such as ransomware. This became our purpose and answer to how we're going to fix the problems that challenge organizations for so long. One of the reasons organizations are adopting Rubrik is because data protection hasn't changed much over the last 20 to 30 years. It's complex architecture that's made up of different hardware and software components that require a lot of time to manage and maintain. We modernize by consolidating all of these components and eliminating the complexity that comes from manual processes such as backup jobs, schedules, windows, tasks, etc., with a single software fabric that scales out infinitely to provide data protection regardless of where that data sits. And organizations aren't meeting recovery objectives with their legacy solution that often requires multiple steps to recover, often resulting in delays and downtime. With Rubrik, you can leverage Google-like search capabilities across the entire environment to quickly find and restore individual files from any point in time. Then you can mount the Rubrik backup directly to the host to instantly recover that data in seconds. Whether recovering from a corrupt database or a ransomware attack, recovery is what Rubrik was built for. We mentioned how legacy backup has gotten exponentially expensive over the years due to hardware upgrades, maintenance, and personal costs to maintain. Modern backup is less expensive. Rubrik customers on average save 20 to 40% in total hard costs, and they recover up to 80 to 90% of their operational time when they move off their legacy systems. Most of the organizations we work with are still in the early phases of defining their cloud strategy and embarking on the cloud journey. There are typically three use cases where organizations have consistently asked and leveraged Rubrik for help. The first is making it easy to archive data to the cloud and take advantage of their cheap and deep storage for your long-term retention and compliance. Rubrik can help convert your on-prem application to cloud-ready workloads and accelerate the move away from on-prem infrastructure. Finally, Rubrik can extend the same level of simplicity, security, and granularity as we do on-prem to the cloud-native workloads without pulling the data back on-prem, and instead by keeping it in your own cloud tenant. And all of this is visible in one console. So you have a single pane of glass to manage and monitor it all. We believe that Rubrik is by far the most secure data protection solution in the market because of our unique approach to security. Every element of Rubrik was and is designed with security in mind from day one. It starts with our end-to-end encryption, followed by our built-in granular reporting to know what is happening and when it's happening, to our role-based access controls and zero trust design, and last but not least, our immutability. Because data security is so important for organizations today, we're going to take a second to dive deeper on this topic. We explained why we're here and how we're building our strategy, but now we'll give you an overarching view of what we're doing to help organizations and IT teams, starting with modernization. We've implemented automation, AI, machine learning, hyperconvergence, and other new technologies to ensure simplicity, security, and availability of your data. We've partnered with the major cloud providers to seamlessly extend your data protection as you transition along your cloud journey. And we've built our platform with software flexibility and licensing portability to align to your cloud strategy, no matter if, when, or how it changes. And we've used our unique position as a data protection provider to unlock intelligence from your backup data, turning it into a business asset. This allows us to innovate further and create new tools to meet the needs of our customers. Today, we'll highlight two that are critical to every organization in cyber resiliency and data governance. Now let's dive into those details. As we mentioned earlier, when we ingest data, we index it, allowing us to unlock unique capabilities and tools to further enhance your data protection. One of those tools was built to help organizations practically defend against ransomware and speed up mitigation, whereas our immutability prevents ransomware from spreading. We can detect anomalies when they happen to discover files that have been modified or deleted or added because of ransomware. We can help you identify the blast radius and know what specific files were impacted. And in a matter of seconds, we can help you easily recover a clean, verified copy of that data with one click. Because of this, ransomware is no longer a concern for Rubrik or our customers. Another tool we introduced in the last 18 months or so is aimed at helping organizations with data governance and classification. Because we have the index of metadata, we can scan it to look for sensitive data, typically hiding in unstructured file sets that's subject to regulatory compliance. We can run the data against industry standards such as PCI, PII, HIPAA, GDPR, etc., or custom analyzers and notify you of existing compliance violations and where exactly they sit within your subsystems. It's incredibly easy to turn on and get started in minutes without any services, training, or learning curves. And we can do all this without the need for additional infrastructure and consolidate yet another point solution for organizations. Rubrik is using your backup data for classification to help support current and future data privacy regulations. And that concludes the slide component of our demo today. I'm going to go ahead and jump into the actual demo. So here we go. So I'm going to go ahead and I know we're short on time here, so I'm going to move this thing along here. This is Rubrik CDM. It's Rubrik Cloud Data Manager. It's the user interface that you'll be using to manage your on-prem Rubrik environment. It is HTML5, so no Java, no Flash. Everything is clickable. Before I logged in, I verified through Okta my identity. We certainly recommend that you enable MFA. So in the event that your credentials were hijacked, if they didn't have your personal device, they couldn't log into the system. We integrate directly with Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator, RSA, Duo, just to name a few. So anything that's SAML 2 compliant. So once you log in, you'll be presented with these various widgets here. And so you'll see tasks that have occurred over the last 24 hours, tasks that are in progress. Here on the right, we see some performance statistics. We're currently showing the last 24 hours. You can drill back down to the last 7 days. We also have a ton of reporting capabilities that I'll touch on here in a little bit. Here within this cluster, we have 7 live mounts, which we'll talk about here in a few minutes. And we see the health of our cluster here. This is typically a point where I take a segue and go into the architecture of Rubrik. So I'm going to click System here, just kind of dive into that with you. So as it pertains to on-prem at your primary location, a 2U hyperconverged appliance would be required. However, for your smaller remote locations, we can just deploy what we call Rubrik Edge, which is a virtual edition on your existing infrastructure, tear off to the cloud, or replicate back to the primary and backup locally as well. But within the 2U hyperconverged appliance, we have 4 compute nodes. So you have your CPU, your RAM, your SSD, and your spinning disk. And then our proprietary immutable file system called Atlas pulls that local storage to those nodes to create a single data store. And we can scale out infinitely, both with performance and capacity. So if there is an unforeseen growth in data, or you acquire another company, you don't have to rip and replace our appliance. You can simply scale out by adding another 2U appliance, both with performance and capacity. Each appliance offers up about 30,000 IOPS. So where it's not NVMe, SSD, production storage, it certainly has enough performance to quickly recover your workloads. And from a connectivity standpoint, we support 25 gig, 10 gig base T, and 10 gig SMP+. So back to the main dashboard here. So we see that we currently have 8 healthy nodes, meaning we have two appliances within this cluster. We see some data reduction statistics here on the right, where we're at on capacity of this cluster. And then here in the center, and this is really where we differentiate ourselves from the majority of the competition out there, is we take an SLA policy-based approach to managing backups. We're under a single SLA, you define your RPO, or how frequently you want to take that backup, how long you want to hold on to that data for, so your retention, your archival location, and your replication target, should you have a secondary location, such as a DR site, where you want to put another Rubrik appliance and replicate to. You can then, as it pertains to VMware, you can assign that at the cluster or host level, the VM level, the tag level, or the folder level to protect your environment. We do integrate directly with VMware, Hyper-V, as well as AHV Acropolis for Nutanix, and no agent is required since we integrate at the hypervisor level. Out of the box, we're presented with a gold, a silver, and a bronze SLA, but you know your environment way better than we do. So more times than not, customers customize and build their own. But essentially what we see is customers go from managing dozens, if not hundreds of these backup and replication jobs down to just maybe a handful or fewer of these SLAs. Here on the left, we can see which workloads we're protecting within this cluster. I point this section out because if a VM came online and wasn't being protected, it would populate under no SLA, and that'd be a good reminder to go back and protect that workload. From a connectivity standpoint, it's very simple and slightly redundant. A lot of that occurs through this gear icon here at the top. So we're going to click on the gear icon. We're going to sync with our vCenter. Click the addition sign. You put in your vCenter IP address, your credentials, click add. And then from then we'll start to auto-discover your environment, and you'll see those virtual machines start to populate under virtual machines here on the left, vSphere VMs. Again, it's the same process with Hyper-V as well as AHV for Nutanix. From a replication standpoint, the gear icon, replication targets. We're going to click the addition sign here. We're going to put in the target IP address of that secondary Rubrik appliance, your credentials, and click add. And then from an archival standpoint, gear icon, archival locations, the addition sign. We're going to select the target that we have, and it's any kind of cloud S3 compatible storage, whether it's Amazon, Azure, GCP, Wasabi, just to name a few. We also work with any NFS or object store on-prem for cheap, deep storage. So from an SLA perspective, I'm going to go ahead and walk you through how we create an SLA and then show you how we assign it. So we're going to click SLA domains here on the left, local domains, the addition sign. We're going to give that SLA domain name a name. So I'm just going to go ahead and choose this one at the top for our 30-day Azure. As it pertains to VMware environments, we do support continuous data protection and provide you very granular recoveries. But here on the left, we're looking at our RPOs. Here on the right, we're looking at our retention. So based on the naming convention here, I'm going to take a snapshot every 4 hours. Let's say I hang on to that for 2 days. Let's say a daily for 30 days, a monthly for 12 months, and then let's say a yearly for 2 years. And again, this is completely customizable based on your requirements. You can then dictate when that first full backup occurs. Again, we're a first time full, forever incremental, and we're constantly rebuilding that backup chain on the back end to provide you with the synthetic full. So typically customers will go in here and dictate when that first full backup occurs. And then since the incremental backups are light lift, we'll let Rubrik do our thing on the back end and load balance those backup jobs across your environment. Then click next. Earlier, we enabled archiving through the gear icon here. So I'm going to select archiving, select the target that we created, and then I'm going to dictate how long that data sits on the appliance before we tier it off to the cloud of your choosing, in this case, Azure. We can also enable instant archive, which means after that first full backup, we're going to send that dedupe and compressed data back over to the cloud, to your archival location, to give you 2 good copies of your data. From a replication standpoint, we're going to enable replication. We're going to select the target that we defined earlier under the gear icon, and then we're going to dictate how long that data sits at that secondary site before aging out. Click next. If everything looks good, you'd click create, and you would have created your very first SLA. This is a demo environment. We have a ton of these. We've been instructed not to create any more. So from an SLA assignment standpoint, if we go here to virtual machines, we auto-discovered your VMware environment or Hyper-V environment or a Nutanix environment. You come in here at the cluster or host level, select that cluster, click Manage Protection. If you already created the SLA, you can select it from the drop-down here. You can start from scratch, just like the process I walked you through. But essentially, any SLA that comes online, any workload that comes online will inherit that SLA. And then you can come in here at the VM level, select your more mission-critical workloads, and assign a more aggressive SLA that will override that blanket SLA, if you will. And that's really it. That's how you protect your entire environment. Really quickly, I know we're coming up on time here. I'm going to show you how our various recovery options. So as it pertains to VMware, I'm going to go ahead and search for my VM here. Once I select the VM, I'm going to be presented with a calendar view here on the right once it populates. Bear with me for a second. This is a demo environment. Calendar view here on the right, evergreen dot represents a recover point or multiple recover points based on the SLA that's assigned here. So evergreen dot represents 4 recover points. We see the latest snapshot, oldest snapshot, next scheduled snapshot, and activities here at the bottom. So if I go to yesterday and I want to recover, I have various options, right? I can do a live mount, which is a NFS point-in-time recovery spinning up from the actual Rubrik appliance and mounted to the server you're choosing. Good use cases for this is test dev. Then we also have instant recovery, which is a disruptive process. So this is a worst-case scenario. Production storage is down. We're going to spin up that point-in-time copy from the Rubrik appliance and leverage Rubrik as the production storage for hopefully a short amount of time. Once your production storage is back online, you can just storage vMotion that data over. And then we also, for VMware, have what we call in-place recovery, where we power down the VM in production. We send over the change block data based on the point in time that you select, and then power that VM back up into production. And we stated earlier, the way we index the metadata, we give you Google-like search functionality. So I can search for a specific file that's located on this VM by typing in the name here. And then when I go to recover, I have the ability to download in place, restore, export to another location. If you don't know the name of the VM, you can search, click the ellipses here, recover files, and traverse the folder hierarchy to locate that VM. Lastly, I want to show you our capabilities as it pertains to SQL. So with SQL, we can do some pretty cool stuff. We can do point-in-time recovery, right? It doesn't require that our 15 meg agent sit on the SQL Server host. And that way we can back up not only the database, but also the transaction logs to get you to that point-in-time recovery. So if I select my AdventureWorks database here at the top, you'll see the workflow is the same, right? We're going to still have that calendar view here on the right. And then this pane on the left showing us the SLA that's assigned, latest recover point, oldest recover point, and activities here at the bottom. So if I go to recover from yesterday, you'll see that I'm presented with this point in time slide here, right, in this toggle bar. So every green dot represents the snapshots that we are taking of the database, right, based on this SLA that's been assigned to it. And then these green lines here represent the transaction logs. So I can essentially go back to 4:48 in the morning in 16 seconds. We'll look at that last snapshot and then we'll apply those transaction logs to get you to that point in time recovery. And our recovery options for that are the live mount, which I just discussed with the vSphere VMs, right? That's a SMB3 share point in time copy from the Rubrik appliance to the SQL Server host of your choosing. A good use case there is test dev, or if you want to copy and paste it, or if a table or row is deleted in production, use whatever management studio you're leveraging to manage your SQL environment, copy and paste that data back on over to production, and then simply unmount by this tab here on the left, live mount. You would click an ellipses, click unmount. We would do all the garbage collection on the back end for you. We also have that instant recovery where you can leverage Rubrik as the primary storage for a short amount of time, and then just storage vMotion that data back over once production is back up and running. Last thing I wanted to show everyone here, sorry, I'm talking fast. I'm trying to meet this time deadline here. If we go to reports gallery, you can see we have a ton of reporting capabilities, right? I'm not going to, obviously, I don't have the time to go through them all, right? But some are SQL specific. So we'll just choose this one, SLA compliance summary here at the top. And I just want to point out that you have the ability to send this report to yourself or someone else now. You can download the CSV, or you can schedule this report or any other report to be sent to you on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, and you can dictate the time that it's sent to you as well. So that concludes my demo, the overview of the Zero Trust Rubrik data management platform. I hope you found it informative. If you have any additional questions or want to see a deep dive demo or have discussions with a sales engineer, please reach out to your Rubrik AE. They'd be happy to facilitate and set up that call. Thanks for your time today. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Robert, for that awesome presentation. You know, I love one of the things that we can always count on from you is a really interesting demo, and kind of digging into the tech is really exciting to see. We definitely got some shout outs for the dashboard. Some comments Jim is saying that sounds really easy to navigate. Norman's giving you a high five as well. So love that. Clearly that was some information that the audience is resonating with. And on that note, I have a poll up on the screen for you all. And what we are looking for is what additional information you would like to get about the Rubrik solution. So again, I will remind you that this makes your life easy. So you don't have to go out and seek any of the information that's out there. Let Rubrik hand it right to you. So click on that poll there. Let them know what information would be helpful for wherever you're at in your research phase. And obviously there's lots to cover that we didn't get to today. So this is a great way to kind of expand where we just landed. I'm also going to remind you to check on the handouts tab. If you have not already visited that, make sure that you download the ebook from Rubrik on Zero Trust Data Security for Databases. If you are worried that legacy database protection is not enough, there are some great answers for you in this ebook. So download that now and save that to read after we wrap today. And again, a reminder that I am continuing to see some great questions come in. I also want to call out, I've seen questions coming in for all the various presenters. That's awesome. Please know that it is fine to send a question in for any speaker, team, solution throughout the entire EcoCast today. We will make sure it gets to the right team. Just identify which team, which speaker you're asking a question of, and we'll make sure it goes to the right place. So keep those questions coming in, and again, that's a great opportunity to be entered for that $50 best question card. Now again, Robert wanted to go a little bit long on his demo, so we are not going to pause for questions here. I am going to take a quick pause to give away a prize, and then we're going to get into our very next and last presentation. We're here already. All right, so our $500 Amazon gift card, and again, a reminder that you do need to be here live, present at the EcoCast with us today. And our next winner of this $500 Amazon gift card is James Laco of Utah. James Laco of Utah, you have won a $500 Amazon gift card. Congratulations. We will follow up with you after we wrap. And we will also be following up with those best question cards, so stay tuned for that. All right, well, let's move it right along, because as I mentioned, folks, we are already here at our last presentation of the day, and we are definitely ending on a high note. Up next, we're going to be chatting with Endpoint expert from CyberArk, Andre Pershogan, Senior Product Marketing Manager, Endpoint. Andre, thank you so much for being here with us today as our grand finale to the EcoCast. I know we're all pretty excited to hear from you and from CyberArk, so I'm going to hand the mic right on over to you. Take it away, Andre.
Hey, thanks so much. Happy to be here. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for your time and your interest in the topic. My name is Andre Pershogan. I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager here at CyberArk. I'm going to talk about implementing foundational endpoint security controls and how they are a cornerstone to endpoint security, because cyber attackers love them some of your administrative privileges. So this whole presentation is about the idea that it's kind of get dismissed a lot as common sense, but at the same time, this basic idea is way too often not get acted upon. And the idea is that to be successful in securing your organizations, we must unprivilege the attacker. If there is only one takeaway from this session, we'd like it to be that the key foundational endpoint security and identity security controls are critical for security, but they are often missing. And what we mean by foundational endpoint security are least privilege, application control, credential theft protection, and protection from ransomware. This alone can give you a very high level of protection against targeted attacks, data breaches, and ransomware. We've tested this stack in our own lab on over 3 million samples of ransomware, and according to our own tests, these technologies were 100% effective against these samples. So the privilege impact on the area of attack is tremendous. According to, again, our internal tests, more than half of the Windows vulnerabilities in 2020 would not be exploitable from the get-go if attempted as standard user. The impact of the privilege on organization security depends on how you choose to approach it. You can pretend that there's nothing you can do, or you may choose to actively manage privilege. You've got to acknowledge the prevalence of privilege and also your dependence on it, but also the attacker's dependence on privilege, right? What we do is we help organizations such as your organization to remove local admin rights and maintain the least privilege. And maintaining here is very important because we often see organizations that were able to briefly achieve the least privilege, or some organizations that would remove local admin rights using GPO and say they have least privilege, not even close, right? But then they would gradually return to privilege sprawl and creep. We provide the right management tools and also policy audit capabilities to improve visibility and control, and with that we ensure that least privilege remains the active status quo of the organization's IT. So when defending against cyber threats, it's a good idea to focus on ransomware, simply because ransomware seemingly exploits every vulnerability out there and delivers a very strong and lasting impact. So if you apply the MITRE ATT&CK framework, the differences between ransomware and any other type of attack are only in the very last stages of the kill chain, the impact and sometimes exfiltration, depending on how ransomware attack is structured. The rest of the strategies are the same, really. So how the attacker gets into your infrastructure, how they move laterally, how they compromise more credentials, move laterally is pretty much the same. So while you focus on ransomware, you also want to keep in mind, and if you're able to prevent the attack at the earliest stage, then the attacker never even gets to the exfiltration of data and the impact part of the attack. So with foundational and security controls, you are able to diffuse a lot, if not most, of TTPs that attackers use, and this way you essentially dry out their arsenal of tricks. So with least privilege, what you do is you complement traditional endpoint security tools, and you also defend them from privileged attacker. So you want to protect your antivirus, your EDR, your next-gen AV, your whatever security tool you have deployed to your endpoints. So this way you allow for early detection in the context of identity, access, and privilege. And that's a very different kind of detection compared to what, let's say, EDR or next-gen AV gives you. So I just mentioned that you need to protect your traditional endpoint security stack. So that's called tampering with endpoint security. But some of you might think, is that really a thing? And I do talk to quite a few security practitioners who think that agent self-defense of the traditional endpoint security tools is not. Unfortunately, that is a thing. And again, looking at MITRE TTPs, you see a good amount of TTPs targeting the defense mechanisms. Anywhere from exploiting, bypassing, and disabling the security agents themselves to, cleaning up after the job is done so that the attack is, stays undetected longer. I have just a few samples here on the slides, on the slide of TTPs, but if you look at the Verizon Data Breach Investigation Report published in 2021, you'll see that attacks that involve privilege misuse are undetected for months and years, while on average it takes only hours and days. So again, coming back to the notion of the foundational endpoint security controls, because traditional endpoint security really needs our help to shine. So now for another real myth out there, and that's that the attackers don't have privileges. In reality, they do. And if they don't, this is going to be their very first step. They want to get privileges really fast. As we like to say, unprivileged attacker is just a privileged attacker with extra steps, right? So that's why we really shoot for defense in depth, or simply comprehensive multi-layered protection. We don't believe that any single solution is able to solve the problem. We don't believe that there is a silver bullet. We believe that every security tool does what it's designed to do best. So EDR, for example, records everything that allows for automated response and investigation, while Endpoint Privilege Manager, our tool, really defends against attackers abusing privileges and compromising credentials. So just look at this quote on the slide. That's from SolarWinds Senate hearing, answering the question, why did EDR fail to alert about a breach for 11 days? And if you haven't seen that, the answer, I kid you not, was, well, once you have admin rights on a particular system, if you are shutting it down, you can pretty much do anything you want on it. That I think is a testament to, once the attacker is a local admin, they can really do anything. They can bypass anything, and you never want to have anybody working under local admins. So for another very popular myth is that by just removing local admin rights, we can secure the environment. I'm afraid I'm also going to have some bad news for you here. Even the standard user credentials can be instrumental for an attacker. And we are talking a number of different vectors, different attack vectors here. One is a continuation of the previous slide, where you strip the user from admin rights, but they still have full access to the machine. And they can use this access to try and leverage tools that exist on the machine in non-elevated fashion in their attack. So that's a kind of minimalistic version of leave of the land type of attack, if you wish. The other arguably much more impactful vector is credential and cookie harvesting, or pretty much any kind of token harvesting. So if you store passwords in a Chromium-based browser, if you're logged into corporate resources like OneDrive or SharePoint or maybe Gmail or GitHub, the attacker can rather easily obtain the stored passwords. And, where would they go from there? Would they, look into your CRM? Would they go to, Salesforce, your PO system, your online banking console? They can hijack sessions. So that they can take everything that you store on hard drive, your marketing materials. I know I don't want that as a marketing professional, or maybe your customer contacts, or what does your GitHub account have access to? Source code, maybe source code with hard-coded credentials, maybe hard-coded credentials for what? For, maybe for cloud, for your cloud, right? Where you might store your customer password vaults, something like that. If it sounds crazy, I mean, just go and read, headlines, even today's headlines, right? Maybe they have access to your PAM tool. That's it. That's the keys from the kingdom. As you can see from here, the attacker can go anywhere. The biggest challenge is not to get too greedy and move slowly to stay under the radars. So if you think this is purely theoretical, think again. Check out the write-ups on recent breaches, historical CI, LastPass, quite a few more. They just keep coming. Let me just quote one article. The company identified the intruder's initial point of access as an employee's laptop that was compromised with malware allowing the theft of session tokens used to keep the employee logged into certain applications, even though their access was protected with two-factor authentication. The company took the blame for compromise, calling it systems failure, adding that antivirus software failed to detect the token-stealing malware on the employee's laptop. Here again, you can see the huge difference between detection and access tools. And this is not picking on AV, this is not picking on MFA. After all, we ourselves sell MFA. It's a testament to how critical the foundational endpoint security controls, how critical it is to, dress in layers. Defense in depth is absolutely paramount. There is no silver bullet, and you want to have as many layers of protection as possible. So this is really the reason why we built Endpoint Privilege Manager. This is, again, a foundational endpoint security tool. So I'm going to repeat this over and over again. I think this is indeed a foundational endpoint security tool that is no longer a good to have in 2023. This is an absolute must. Let's look at the Endpoint Privilege Manager in more details. Remember that EPM works with already authenticated user, right? So you pass your PAM controls, you are now authenticated to the system. EPM takes it from there. So if you want it, it's the very last layer of defense. And if you're doing this right, that user is not a local admin. Nobody is local admin, not your service desk, not your maintenance team, not your developer, not your DB administrator, because nobody in your organization should be a local admin. So essentially, this is the last line of privilege defense. Now that the user is authenticated, we still want to flexibly define what they can and what they cannot do. This will, of course, be different for different organizational roles, right? So we want to define that what's safe, and we want to instruct EPM to elevate that safe program, and then it will, run in elevated states. So this way we can control impact from malicious actions through the combination of least privilege, application control, just-in-time elevation, credential defense, protection from ransomware, and privilege deception. So as an example, you might need PowerShell for your work, right? And we can set up a rule that you can run PowerShell in elevated form, but we never want your Excel application to spawn PowerShell. And we can set up a rule and say, well, PowerShell can only run if launched by user, but it can never be spawned by any other application. And this way, for example, things like Log4j would not be able to exploit the vulnerability on the system. So credential theft protection is absolutely critical. So we talked about this a little bit in myth number 2, that credential theft protection prevents cookie hijacking and credential stealing from a variety of places, starting from the operating system, credential stores, and then browsers, remote access tools, FTP clients, and whatnot. Also note that ransomware protection policy built into EPM, it focuses a little bit on a different angle of protection from ransomware. So while things like APP, so for example, antivirus or EDR focus on behavioral aspects of ransomware, they try to, spot similarities in how ransomware searches for files and creates the files, and they try to detect a threat and stop it. So we instead focus on access control, right? And we define the sensitive information, and we define that sensitive information handlers, and we make sure that only those handlers can touch that sensitive data. So if somebody introduces a new malicious application, however benign it looks, right? You can do all kind of analysis and it will never trigger your antivirus. However benign it looks, if it's not designated as a content handler, it will not be able to touch the sensitive data. And that means when you say to touch sensitive data, you not only mean to encrypt, but you also mean to exfiltrate, right? So super important. So what's next? This is pretty much about the technology, but I invite you to actually hang on. So I want to make sure I stay on this slide for a little bit longer. So we would like you. So for some reason, I don't know why, but my slide is clicking through. Maybe it has timeout on it. But here on the slide, we'll distribute those slides for you guys to check out later. There's a link to free trial, and there's a link to demo. So we invite you to obviously sign up for a free demo. We believe it's best when our seasoned professionals show you how the tool works. But if you want to do it yourself, it's super easy to set up a machine to try, and you only need like maybe 30 minutes to get everything up and running and try it yourself. And also there is a link on the slide that keeps skipping to a webinar, which is my absolute favorite of all the webinars I did last year. That's our lab in our red team, Andy Thompson and Shaina Hari. They are talking about cookie theft. And Shai also talks about his experience as VP of red team services, that they really switched from attacking, going after Active Directory. They're now going after cookies in the browsers, and they can have all the keys to the kingdoms they need. So I hope this is going to be helpful for you. I have the link for the webinar on the slide, and this is it. I think it doesn't get simpler than that. All you need to do is implement foundational endpoint security controls, remove local admin rights, enforce least privilege, defend credentials, and protect from ransomware. So I really appreciate your time today, and I hope we do have some time for questions.
We absolutely do, Andre. Thank you so much for that presentation. And for anyone who missed it in the chat, I did take, I think you're right, Andre. There must be some kind of an automatic build in that slide. But I took the links and posted for the free trial and the demo in the chat. So if you're missing it, if it's happening too quickly when we click over to it, you can check the chat and grab those links there. And again, that's a great way to get started. The other thing I do want to point out before Andre and I get into the Q&A section here is that there is a poll up on your screen right now. So what we're looking for is what additional information you would like to get about the CyberArk solution. So obviously, Andre gave us a great intro and lots of really great information, but there is lots more to learn. So wherever you're at, whatever kind of exploration you're doing for your team, you're going to have to bring this information back to somebody at some point, to a stakeholder in your organization. So this is a great way to get the information that you need so that you can bring that information back to who it needs to go to, or if you're the decision maker, so that you can make that good decision. So click on the poll right now, decide the information that's going to be helpful for you, and let CyberArk send it right to you. And while you're doing that, Andre and I are going to dig into some questions. Are you ready to jump in, my friend?
Yep.
Okay, let's do it. Ren here is wondering if you could talk a little bit about MFA and what may or may not be available through CyberArk.
Right. So CyberArk is the identity security company. We have, the whole portfolio of identity security tools, starting from privileged access management. We have solutions such as CyberArk Identity that provides MFA and user behavioral analytics. We have solutions obviously such as Endpoint Privilege Manager that I was talking about, solutions for developers, secrets management, and so on and so forth. So MFA is a tool that is integrated with CyberArk EPM, and it can be used in several different ways. You can use CyberArk Identity to actually log into the endpoint, but also you can use that for step-up authentication. So if you want to make sure that your admins work with several, let's say, set up several levels of risk, right? And you want to make sure that anytime your admin runs an elevated PowerShell, then they re-authenticate themselves again, right? So you want to make sure they, didn't step out of the, away from machine and somebody is not using their machine to actually get access to the PowerShell and do some bad things. So you want to send that challenge to the device. So I hope I answered your question because I mentioned them in a little bit different context during the slides, but it's about CyberArk.
No, that's great. And, Elena here has a question that I think probably a lot of people are wondering about, because obviously with all of this, having insights is really key, knowing what you're protecting and knowing how you're protecting it. So Elena's wondering if you could talk to us about any detailed logs and reports on endpoint activity that might be available through CyberArk.
So, yes and no, right? First of all, customer confidentiality is super important to CyberArk. But also we do run some analysis, not necessarily on logs, but so for example, we have EPM solution for Linux, right? That basically provides least privilege for Linux, and it's a plugin for sudoers. For sudo command on Linux. Sudo is what you use to elevate commands on Linux. And the way you configure sudo classically is you use sudoers file. You use something like vsudo to edit that, and you put in new lines of. Basically, it looks like a wall of text, right? It's not. It's not easy to work with. It has no limitations, but it's what Linux admin use. So we were wondering, and we looked at sudoers files that that we had at our disposal, obviously with the permission, right? And we did analysis. We ran analysis on like how many lines of code are there, how many rules, how many user aliases. And that is, just to get the idea, is like how complex can it be for a Linux admin to actually go there and modify that if they have a new user or they have a new application, and not to make a mistake. And I actually did publish this infographic on both CyberArk and LinkedIn, and it's thousands and thousands of lines of text, and it's thousands of user aliases. It's there are some privileged entries that's been there in sudoers files that are decades old, and the privileged entries were there for 5 years, 7 years, and there are wildcards, and it's just crazy to me how complex it gets and how easy it is to make a mistake, and how easy it is to introduce that risk into your organization. So I don't know if that answers your question again, but that was really insightful for me and my friends in our IT. So
that's a good reminder, important reminder how easy it is for risk to enter, which is of course why we're here today. Hopefully, kind of planning ahead. I do want to ask one question here, and we're getting pretty close to the end of our time here, but I'm going to try to sneak in one or two more. Faiz here is wondering if you could speak a little bit to the opportunities that might be available with machine learning and artificial intelligence in providing endpoint security.
Yeah, so we're not going to talk about ChatGPT, right? Machine learning has been used in endpoint security for well over a decade, right? The number of samples that keep coming in at security companies such as CyberArk, it's not humanly possible to process all of that. And obviously, AI is used on many different layers, levels. I'm sorry, the AI is used to to go through samples and do preliminary analysis of that, to identify the samples of interest. But there are some some algorithms that are used on the endpoint as well, right? And we at CyberArk use, for example, machine learning to identify and recommend the policies for EPM. We use machine learning in our CyberArk identity to spot patterns, and more importantly, to spot irregularities in user behavior, in actor behavior, in the pattern of applications that they ran, because because this is what AI is best at. Like, we humans, we cannot easily spot things, but AI can identify those patterns and highlight them for us, and that's why it's very useful in the industry.
Yeah, that's a great point. That augmentation is really key. Andre, I have to say, I wish we could keep going with this because we do have lots more questions that we are not getting to, and it's a really fascinating conversation. Unfortunately, we are going to have to wrap up. We got to let people get back on about their days. But before we let you go, one last question I want to ask you. If somebody out there is really excited to get started with CyberArk, they want to jump in. I saw a question come in about free trials. Is that an option for them? And if so, is that the best way to get started? Or how would you recommend that somebody jump in with CyberArk?
Yeah, free trial is free. I personally love demo because you get one-to-one with one-on-one with the expert. You can ask them any questions. If you want to go trial route, it's perfectly fine. You can set up your accounts in just minutes. You can set up almost free VM in, let's say, AWS. You can start creating your policies. You can try. You can see how things work and just realize the power that this tool has. So whichever works for you. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate the time.
I really appreciate that, Andre. You have a great rest of your day. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. And for everyone out there that asked a question, again, I know that we did not get to all of them, although Faiz here, thank you, saying that Andre gave some helpful clarity with his answers there. So I agree. I think that was a great way to wrap up that wonderful presentation. And I do want to say to anyone that asked a question that we did not get to, please hang tight because the CyberArk crew will make sure that they get you some answers. So thank you for getting those in. And a reminder that you are still entered to win that best prize or best question prize after we wrap today. Speaking of prizes, now, hey, real quickly, I was about to jump into prizes, but I have one last thing to say about CyberArk. If you haven't already done this, please head on over to the handouts tab and make sure that you click in. It's actually, you can grab a really cool white paper from CyberArk called Quick Start with Least Privilege using Endpoint Privilege Manager. It's going to cover how to use Quick Start Least Privilege Framework, which is available in your CyberArk Endpoint Privilege Manager, the EPM, to help you quickly improve your organization's security posture. You're going to talk about reducing cyber risk and getting better compliance. And really setting a stage for role-specific least privilege. So basically all the awesome things that we just chatted about with Andre in some greater detail. Really interesting read, so please do make sure that you've downloaded that and make sure that you can share that with your team, spread that good information around. All right, well, I think, like I said prizes. We're going to get to the prizes. Let's do that. All right, so we're going to give away one last $500 Amazon gift card and a reminder that you do need to be here live present at the EcoCast in order to win. So our very last winner of a $500 Amazon gift card is Greg Armstrong of Georgia. Greg Armstrong of Georgia. All right, congratulations to Greg. I'm going to review all our lucky winners today. We had 3 Amazon gift cards, $500, going to Kevin Elbert of Georgia, James Laco of Utah, and Greg Armstrong of Georgia. Georgia coming in strong today. As always, we will be in touch about claiming your prizes after the event, and stay tuned for that best question card because we will be following up with you after we wrap. All right, now we're getting close to the close here, and I do want to say that if any of you out there on the EcoCast are thinking that this has seemed like a lot of fun, you work for an organization that you think would like to get involved with one of our EcoCasts, a megacast, a summit, a webinar, whatever you have in mind, we would love to have that conversation with you. So please do reach out to Actual Tech. You can reach us via email at connect@actualtechmedia.com. And we would love to see you here on a future EcoCast, a megacast, a summit, a webinar, a panelcast, a democast. The options are endless. Come chat with us. All right. Well, on that note, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I really want to thank all of our fascinating speakers today from KnowBe4, from Rubrik, and from CyberArk for making this EcoCast possible. Speaking of which, a very special thank you to all of you for attending, because we're not here if you guys aren't here asking questions and participating. I really had a lot of fun with all of you today, kind of digging into this endpoint protection, all the ways that we can address with technology, but also that human perspective. I think we got a lot of really interesting points. We talked about mindsets. We talked about human deception. We talked about zero trust. We talked about technology solutions, MFA. I mean, the list is endless. We crammed a lot into a short period of time. And I'm really excited to go home well, I am home, but to continue doing some digging on my own. I hope that you are all excited and pumped up to do some research as well. Speaking of which, if you are in a research phase, and especially if one of the things you're thinking about today is remote work, that's a big point with this endpoint management. So if you're in maybe a remote or a hybrid workplace, there is an expert series that you cannot miss. That's this Friday, that's January 20th at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific, Architecting the Enterprise for Remote Work, Remote Offices, and Cloud Data. This is going to be such a fascinating conversation with Howard Cohen. He's an incredible expert, and Scott Becker, my fellow moderator, who I know you all know and love already. So be sure to mark your calendar for this expert series on Friday. We also do have another EcoCast on Thursday. It's all about reducing cloud costs, which is going to be awesome. There's just lots of great opportunities to join us. So I hope that I will see you again soon, wherever it is. And until then, I hope you all have an absolutely beautiful rest of your day.